All right, it is time to go live. It is November 3rd, 2023, and this is the first November edition of Ask Me Anything by Surge Business Law. This is Matthew Newsom, and I am streaming live from Uptown Ankeny, where the speed limit is 20 miles an hour, but all the cars try to get to 60 miles an hour in the shortest time period. So you might hear a little bit of energy coming from outside my office window, and we'll just have to live with it. I'm so glad to see so many people interested in the Ask Me Anything. We did get quite a few interesting and engaging questions. I'm going to stall for just a moment to make sure that we are live on all three platforms. We're streaming to Facebook, we're streaming to LinkedIn, and we are streaming to YouTube. And if you are not yet following on any of those platforms, please do so. You might be able to see it right now on the side or the bottom of your screen. You can see the like, follow, subscribe button, something like that. Please, please hit that button so that you get notified when we do this again. All right, let's get to our first question. This was sent to me by Austin from Iowa Quality Air, and he asked, is it better to use a home equity line of credit for a business acquisition or use an SBA loan? And so this question is valid whether you're trying to buy a business, start a business, buy real estate, for example, for investment purposes, or any of those types of things. And so first of all, I just want to tell you my philosophy on debt, and that is that there is such a thing as bad debt and good debt. Bad debt is when you go into debt for something that is gone and over with in the flash. So using a credit card to buy dinner and then not paying it off is bad debt because it encourages you to spend money that you don't have. However, buying a revenue generating asset can be good debt. For example, if you need a sign for your business and you need to borrow money for your sign, and that's going to draw people in and make your business more successful, that might be a revenue generating asset. My mom's ice cream shop that she ran for years had numerous ice cream machines, and those machines are outrageously expensive. And so borrowing money to buy an ice cream machine is an example of good debt, because every time you turn the handle on that ice cream machine, it generates cash. Money comes out of the funnel. Looks like ice cream, but it's really money. And so, first of all, borrowing money to buy a revenue generating asset can be a good plan. I just want you to make sure that you're borrowing the right amount of money and that the asset really is going to generate revenue, because sometimes we see people spend money on things and they're just not that sure it's going to work out. And now you owe money and you don't have the benefit. All right, so now that we've talked about that, let's talk about the different ways to get money. Now, first of all, I think that it's important and good for you to keep cash on hand. So let's say that you've got a $15,000 buffer in your account and you have an upcoming expense for $15,000. You could use the cash and pay for it, or you could borrow money. And I will just say this, that if you burn through all of your cash buffers, then you might end up in a situation where you have to borrow money fast. And that usually does not put you in a position to get a good rate. So that's probably not the right way to borrow money. And so I would say make sure that you keep your cash reserves healthy. And in that case, you might be faced with a couple different options. So a home equity line of credit lets you borrow against the equity of your house. For example, if you bought a house in the Des Moines area 4 years ago, and you've just been making the minimum payments on it, you would normally not have that much equity. But about 2 years ago, the equity value, or the value of homes in the Des Moines area, shot up. And so you might find that you've got a surprise $100,000 in equity that you didn't know that was there, or that wasn't there before. And a bank will usually let you borrow against it. And there's two ways. You can do kind of a refinance where they give you a big check and then you can do what you want with that money, or they can give you a line of credit, which basically lets you use a little bit of it here and there. And so this home equity line of credit is that latter. It lets you borrow now and then. Again, people can get into trouble by using this for short-term expenses, like going on a vacation or going out to eat or buying Christmas toys. I don't think that's smart. But if you're buying a business, then you're talking about buying something that's going to be making money for you. If you're buying rental house or a duplex, then this is a different story. And so I think that it could be a good idea. Here's the benefit of a home equity line of credit. First of all, it's fast. You really can't get money faster than a home equity line of credit. The interest rates tend to be okay. They're not going to be the best interest rates, but they're going to be okay. An SBA loan is a really great thing. The way that the SBA works is, and I'm not a banker, I'm not an insider into this process, so forgive me if this is not to the T accurate, but the federal government helps offset the risk that you might not pay your loan. And so the bank might say, boy, they've only been in business 2 years or 1 year or 6 months. We wouldn't normally lend money to them. But the SBA says we will absorb some of that risk. And so if they default on that loan, we'll cover you for, I don't know, 60% or some number. And so the banks will then say, well, that makes it a little bit easier to say yes. So some people who would struggle to get a conventional bank loan might qualify for an SBA loan. And so this is a really nice thing. SBA loans, especially the very popular 7A loans, have as little as 10% of a down payment. So you can come up with 10% cash. Let's just say that you wanted to buy a business and it was going to cost you $200,000. You come up with 20 grand to cover some of your expenses, and then you can borrow 180. I would say if you have the time and luxury to do an SBA loan, do that. And you might find, let's just use this situation where you're going to buy a business for $200,000. You might borrow the $20,000 down payment through the home equity line, or by doing a 401k loan. And then using that for your down payment, and then doing an SBA loan for the 180. And actually, now that I think about it, if that were your option, I would probably do the 401k loan first, because then you're paying yourself the interest rather than a bank. But the SBA loan is going to be better. However, it takes longer. The last I heard, which was in the summer, July, I think, it was taking a minimum of 45 days. And if there was real estate involved, it was going to be 60 days. And if you're buying investment real estate that you are not going to be occupying, you don't even have a choice. The SBA loan is not available. You have to occupy at least more than 50% of the building. So 50.1% would be enough. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to qualify for the SBA loan. But the reason why I like the SBA loan, if you can do it, is this. In order to qualify, you're going to have to jump through some hoops, and they can be a little frustrating, but those hoops are so valuable. They're going to make you do a business plan, and a good business plan. I do business plans a little different. If you need help with a business plan and you don't want the SBA, talk to me and I'll help you. I do business plans backward. But it doesn't matter that much if you do it forwards or backwards, because the end result is, if you work with the SBA on your business plan, it's going to be a good business plan. And having a business plan gives you a much, much greater chance of success in your business. And so I do like the SBA loans. You'll probably also get a little bit of a lower interest rate. I think your best interest rates come from conventional loans, where you're putting down 25%. But if you are not able to do a conventional loan, you want to do an SBA loan, it's going to give you your best rate. And then also, too, those extra efforts that you have to put into getting the loan and qualifying are going to give you a better chance of success in the long term. So, long-winded answer, but that's my suggestion. All right, next question. Also from Austin. What are some good networking techniques for meeting other business owners in the metro? So I recently was watching season 2 of Undercover Billionaire. And I skipped season 1. I didn't watch it, but I sometimes find Grant Cardone a little inspirational, a little over the top for me. I definitely don't want to be Grant Cardone, but I do like some of his methods and some of the things that he does. So I watched that. And the thing that I noticed about all three of the entrepreneurs who were in that show was the first thing they did when they were dropped into their new town with a phone with no contacts, old truck, and $100 cash. The first three things that each and every one of them did was they went and started networking. And so one of the ladies went to a church, and that was her thing. So she went to one of the local churches and used that as a resource to find affordable place to stay. And that ended up opening the door to her meeting some important people in the area. Another lady, she basically went and knocked on doors and met with a bunch of business owners and did that. Grant Cardone, the third entrepreneur, he went to sales businesses, an RV dealership, a gym, places like that, where he could put his experience doing sales to work. And then he used that to ask people, who should I be talking to? So if you want some inspiration on general networking, I think the first couple episodes of Undercover Billionaire Season 2 would be good inspiration. In Des Moines, the first thing that I'm going to suggest is that you go find any in-person groups that are focused on your niche. So for example, I am a member of the Technology Association of Iowa. I haven't been to their events since COVID shut everything down, but I am planning to be at one of the upcoming ones in November. 1 Million Cups is another technology focused event. And I say technology, even though, yeah, Matt, you're a lawyer. Before I was a lawyer, I was a technology geek, and it's in my roots. And so that's where I want to go. But there's real estate investor groups, there's technology groups, there's business networking groups. There's BNI, which is a great organization that is usually looking for members. So BNI, you can go look at their website and find a location near you. There's real estate agent focused networking events where people exchange business cards and get to know each other. So my suggestion is find a couple people in your industry, and I would probably start on LinkedIn if you don't know where else to go, and say, hey, what are the most important events? So CLEs can be a good event. Now, here's a secret technique that a lot of people don't think about, and that is that in-person events are almost always looking for speakers. And so the people who run these events are usually desperate to find their next speaker. And so the good events, they might have 3, 4, or 5 speakers planned out, but it's a constant hustle to get the next event speaker in the queue. So if you are comfortable talking in front of a group, do it. Go talk to the event organizer and say, hey, I can talk on this or this. Or if you've got a subject that you're looking for someone on, I'd love to talk. You'll get an opportunity. Second of all, there's trade magazines. And trade magazines are those magazines that are oftentimes free, that are special for your industry. Earlier this year, I was actually featured in Ankeny Living magazine on the cover, where I wore a ridiculously short tie. And you can go check those types of magazines. There's Iowa Lawyer Magazine is a trade magazine for lawyers. My friend who's a realtor, I was in his office and he had a magazine for realtors in there. But every industry probably has a magazine for them. And the second secret is that those magazines are desperate for writers. And so if public speaking isn't your thing, but writing is, if you want to build some traction, offer to write an article. And if you don't even know what to write about, ask them and they'll give you a list of topics. So while I was in law school, I hit up the Iowa Lawyer magazine and I wrote 3 articles for them. And they would probably invite me to do more if I was willing, because these guys are always trying to find articles. So if you want to make connections, there's a few tips. Go to your local events and just show up. Find which events are local. Hit up a couple people on LinkedIn and ask for help. But the events that are focused on your industry are probably going to be great places to start. BNI is another great place to start. Talk to the event organizers and get an opportunity to speak, and then talk to the trade magazines and get an article right. All right, moving on to the next one. Collecting on an unpaid bill with a non-responsive out-of-state customer. And so this is Rodney Nichols of Nursing On Call Inc. And he gave me a lot more detail that I didn't want to share, but it's a very sad story. And if you've been in business for a year or more, you have probably had to fight to collect on an unpaid bill. And so I thought, boy, everybody everybody can relate to this feeling of having to collect on an unpaid bill. And when you've hounded someone a few times for payment, hey, when are you going to pay? When are you going to pay? What happens? They block you and then they stop responding to you. And this is all the worse when they're out of state. So let's just talk about what to do with an unpaid bill. First of all, I'm just going to say this: be persistent, right? You're going to have to ask a few times. And if they block you, call from a different number and try hard to get them to talk to you. If it's on the phone or in person, if you say, hey, I just wanted to follow up on that call, I wouldn't be rude because that shuts people down. I know times are tough, and everything's more expensive nowadays, but it looks like you're behind, and I just want to know when you're going to get caught up on that. So you do that, and you're going to have a little bit better chance. But if you had this problem, you've known that while that works, sometimes you can only go so far. So the next thing that you can do is you can call me and have me write a demand letter. This works very well, and people don't like getting letters from lawyers, and so you meet with me and we'll make a strategy. When we talk about this, we usually talk about, well, what if they don't pay? And the thing is you have to decide if you want to go to court or not. The nice thing is in debt collection situations, you can often recover attorney's fees. Not always, but often. And let's just say that you've got a small bill. Let's say it's $900, right? And for most practical purposes, it can be a real challenge to spend too much time fighting on it. And yet, if you had an extra $900 in your pocket, you'd probably be a lot happier. And so these even small bills can be frustrating. In the case of Rodney's situation, it's a lot more than $900. And so in that case, it is usually a little bit easier to get a lawyer to help you, and it's also a little easier to justify getting a lawyer because the amount of money at stake here is a bigger deal. But let's start with projects that are under $6,500 in Iowa. That's small enough to go into small claims court. Many business owners can and should learn how to do small claims court process. And if you are a real estate investor, it's worth it to learn how to do small claims, because paying me to do it is not worth it because your chances of actually collecting are low. But you can get that judgment out there so that you can get the sheriff or the court or a debt collector to help you get that money. And sometimes it trickles in over time. If you don't have the time and the money and it's worth it, then paying me to do it is about $2,000. And then I'll go to court, I'll serve the papers. Oftentimes they don't show up. I'll enter the evidence, and then we'll get a judgment. And then we have to collect on it, which does still incur a little bit extra charge. But oftentimes, like I said, that $2,000 you pay me can be recovered. When the total debt collection is over $6,500, now we've got a little bit more of a challenge because we've got to go to regular court where most people are not going to be DIYing it. They're going to need a lawyer to do it. Some of these court cases can be expedited, but sometimes it takes a year or more to get these resolved. And I should say not sometimes, but oftentimes it takes a year or more to get those resolved. And so that is a slow, drug out process. In which case you still want to talk to me so that we can talk through the options. And sometimes I do refer those out. I've got a few friends that are experts at debt collection. And so if you've got a particularly tricky issue, we'll bring in one of those. And then now let's talk about Rodney's situation. What happens when it's an out-of-state debt? First of all, I do want you to start by talking to me. Reach out to me first because every situation is different. And I can't give you specific legal advice without knowing the particular details. But usually it starts with me, and then we decide, can I help you collect on this debt in the other state, or do we need to bring in a local counsel? In which case, I know people all over the country. I stay in touch with many other business attorneys and debt collection attorneys. And so I have a pretty extensive network. I'm going to guess that I've got a contact in every state plus DC, Puerto Rico, Canada. So so we will decide if we need to bring in one of those people. And then if so, they're going to do that same process. They're going to send a demand letter, and then they're going to take it to the next step if necessary, going to court. And usually in that process, you're only going to be paying them, not me. So I'll do an intro and then step out of the picture. So that's what it looks like. I think that your most expedient route is to contact a debt collector. I can help you with that. So contact me. Next, Dean Stevenson of Mean Dean Design. That is Dean that helped me design my logo and is a amazing creator. He asked, is there anything that could be done to expedite the process for patents, trademarks, and etc.? Now, first of all, I'm not a patent attorney. Patent process is long, and you're not probably going to be too successful at expediting that other than hiring a patent pro. And if you need help finding a patent pro, I have a few that I work with. You can hire a patent attorney anywhere in the country. They don't have to be in Iowa, and I have a couple friends in Iowa and outside of Iowa who are pros, and working with such a pro will get the project done as quick as possible. That's patents. Trademarks is a different story. You want to contact me to do your trademark work because I can do that and we can push the process through as quick as possible. The challenge with a trademark is you need to, first of all, have your material organized. And so um, you need to provide proof that you're using it in commerce. And we know that there's some things that work better than others. And so you're going to work with us. And for example, if you're selling a product in a store, then you're going to want to have a picture of it on the shelf with a label, with a price tag. That's going to work faster and better than a lot of other things. But but I'll tell you, if you really want to go fast, you've already seen this thing, and it's probably kind of annoying. You've gone to Amazon and you've looked at stuff for sale, and you've seen something by AABBCDLLJKRPT brand, and you're like, what the heck are those letters for? Well, that's their brand name. And so what they did is they just typed in the jumble of letters to make sure that there was something absolutely unique, and then they ran it through the trademark process and they pushed it through as quick as possible. If you choose something extremely original and unique, you're going to get faster approval on a trademark than if you pick something that is less unique. So for example, Surge Business Law is not going to be the fastest name to trademark because business law is in there, and it's going to make that process of getting approval a little bit slower. But if I took out the term business law and I took out the term surge and I just typed in, SGEBL NTK or something like that, that would go through quickly because there's not going to be anything like it. So anyways, the answers to your question is, first of all, work with a pro. And so for either case, start with me. If it's trademark, I'm your pro. If it's patent, I'll tell you who your pro should be, and then we'll get going. Because having a pro will help you streamline that process so that you avoid hassles. And then if you really want to go fast, you need to choose a perplexing and obscure name. Another person responded and asked, what are your thoughts of establishing an LLC in Wyoming? And every time somebody asks me this question, I say, oh, you've probably seen videos by Anderson Advisors. And the next question on my slide is my thoughts on Anderson Advisors. And so this is without a doubt, this question always comes because they saw a video. Here's the thing, I'm going to answer them both at the same time. I think that Wyoming is an okay place to start an LLC. Anderson Advisors also likes to suggest Nevada. I do not like Nevada as a place to start an LLC. But I will say this, that the added complexity provides of going to Wyoming or Nevada or to another state provides little to no value. So people like Wyoming because Wyoming has very good privacy laws. They keep information private. Well, guess what? Iowa does as well. Wyoming also is very cheap to start an LLC in. Well, guess what? Iowa is as well. Both are two of the lowest cost states in the country. And if you're watching this video, there's a good chance that you are in Iowa. And so the benefits of starting out in your own state are way higher than the disadvantages of that you lose. So this Anderson Advisors group, they scare people. They say, oh, well, when you get sued for $10 million, well, that just doesn't happen. It almost never happens. And so they get you in this state of mind where you're afraid that you're going to get this massive lawsuit filed against you. It just doesn't happen. People don't get those big lawsuits very often. They tend to make the news when they do, and so that's why people get worried about it, because they're scary sounding. But the fact is, you can own an apartment building, a couple of duplexes, we can structure these so that you have a lot of protection. We set up LLC holding companies in Iowa because it's very economical to start a business in Iowa. Iowa has very good privacy protection. And then also too, Iowa has a really good business structure for holding companies. It's called a Series LLC. And Iowa is one of the first states to adopt the Uniform Protected Series Act, which makes setting up a holding company very easy and very affordable. And so by doing all of these complexities, you make your life harder. I helped a client unwind their extremely complex Nevada structure that was set up by, I'm not going to say a name, but um, it's basically the same thing that Anderson Advisors suggests, where they had trusts and LLCs and in this whole structure, and making any change to everything required sending letters to people in offices in different states and asking them for permission to deal with your own property. And it costs thousands of dollars to set these up. And then you have to pay annually to have them manage it. And why? It's because you're afraid that this unlikely event is going to happen and it's going to sue you. Now, if you had $100 million net worth, I think we should probably talk about some complicated structures. But if you've got a $1 million net worth or a $500,000 net worth, maybe even a $5 million net worth, it's just not going to happen. Your number one protection is going to be having good insurance. Having good insurance is the absolute number one protection that you can do. Having a good LLC structure is another good protection that you can do. I see we got a question from Nursing on Call Inc. I'm going to come to your question at the end. It's a great question, definitely worth answering. So my thoughts on a Wyoming LLC is Wyoming is a fine place, but it just adds a level of management and complexity because you've got to find someone in Wyoming to help you. And if you're in Wyoming, then that's a piece of cake. If you're not in Wyoming, it's not a piece of cake. Use Iowa. Now, I'm just going to say this, that one of the benefits of Wyoming and Nevada about their privacy is about to go away. And that is the government has created a system where all business owners have to report their information and their ownership interest to the federal government. This is not going into a public database, supposedly, but you're going to be hearing more from this as we get closer to the end of the year. But there is a new system, and the process for reporting is not live yet, but the rules kick in 2024. And so this idea of Wyoming being more privacy conscious than the rest of the state is about to disappear, because nationally there's going to be a federal database that requires owners to disclose their information, and 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 so that's going to level the playing field, because these slight differences between Iowa, Nevada, Nebraska, and a couple other states that I think are generally very privacy conscious are going to disappear. So what do I think of Anderson Advisors? They try to scare you into expensive, complicated, unnecessary business structures. So please call me. I will tell you how to set up your business to get the maximum risk protection possible, and for the least amount of work, because I think that simple is better. And again, if you've got a net worth of a few $1 million or less, the simplicity outweighs the complicated structure that some of these advisors talk about. All right, next one. Do you recommend a trust over a will? If yes, what kind of trust, living, revocable, or irrevocable? And so I don't think a trust is better than a will. A trust is something that you add on to a will. So when something happens to you and you die, then the property that you own, the things that you own, get distributed to your heirs. And if you don't have any kind of plan, then there's a complicated legal set of rules that says, okay, if you're married, if you have kids, if you don't, these are how it gets distributed. And that can be a kind of a frustrating and challenging process. And so having a will greatly makes life easier for your heirs and your dependents, for the people who come after you, because it allows you to specify clear instructions on and what you want to happen with your possessions. So, hey, I want my spouse to have it, or I want this to get distributed to my kids, or I don't have a spouse and I don't have kids. I want it to go to this charity or that charity, or to my brother, or whatever. So having a will is absolutely necessary. Now, a trust makes life simpler in some cases, because what happens is, and I'm sorry, I'm going to just make this a little bit simpler, but I'm going to give up some technical details, so forgive me for oversimplifying this. But essentially, you transfer possession of some of your belongings, like your house, like your bank account or whatever. You put them into the name of the trust. And then what happens is when you pass, the control of those assets and immediately transfers to the people that you appoint in your trust documents. Whereas the transfer that happens in a will takes months or sometimes years, the transfer of these assets that are in the trust happens the moment you become unable to manage your own trust. And so that can be really good in situations where, for example, you have kids and you need to make sure that they're cared for. So if you want to make sure that your house, your bank account, or whatever is available to them, and that you've appointed someone in your life to care for them, then a trust makes that process go a lot simpler, a lot smoother, and it makes it, I'm not going to say effortless, but close to effortless. Likewise, if you have a business and you want to make sure that control of that business is handled in a certain way, a trust is one way to do that. And typically what we will do is a combination of a trust and some business documents to control that. So a trust can be very, very handy for business owners, because you can say, I want my business to be in this trust, and I want my house to be in that trust, and I want my my real estate investments to be in a different trust. You can set up different rules for what happens in each of those situations. And the nice thing is, again, they take effect right away. So a living, revocable, irrevocable trust, what's the difference? So a living trust and a revocable trust tend to be the same thing. So usually when we say living trust, we mean a revocable trust. What happens is when you die, that trust becomes irrevocable. And what that means is the rules that you set up can no longer be changed, except for what the documents say. So a trust includes a kind of document, a complex legal document that says, if this happens, then I want these rules to kick into effect. An irrevocable trust is meant to be unchangeable from the get-go. And an irrevocable trust is a lot of work. So first of all, if you are the owner of the possessions that you're transferring in, and then you are also the person who manages the trust, then that's not going to be the right situation. Usually when we set up an irrevocable trust, we need to appoint somebody other than you to be a manager for the trust. And this is something that happens when people use companies like Anderson Consultants to set up real estate management. And that's why it can be so complicated to make changes, is because you're no longer in charge of those assets. You've got to ask permission for someone else. I'll just tell you some situations where I think an irrevocable trust is really good. If, for example, you want to make sure that let's just say, for example, let's say you've got a farm, and you want to make sure that when you're gone, the assets of the farm are used for the benefit of your spouse. But then when that person no longer needs those assets, either they die or they need to go into a nursing home or something, then transfer of those possessions goes to other people in a certain fashion, then a trust is the right way to do that. And that often is going to be irrevocable. Likewise, when a person is not trustworthy to manage their own assets, irrevocable trust can be the right way to go. Sometimes people use irrevocable trusts as a way to avoid losing control of assets in a lawsuit. That doesn't tend to work as well as you think. And so there's these things called charging orders, which is a topic that I think we should probably come up with in a different event. But these irrevocable trusts can be undone if a person is trying to avoid paying their own liabilities. And then also, to irrevocable trusts, they come with they're just hard to manage. And so again, if you say I've got $100 million, I'm going to say, yeah, let's talk about an irrevocable trust. If you say I've got $1 million, I'm going to say let's talk about ways to manage your risk that are simpler for you on a day-to-day basis, rather than an irrevocable trust. But a revocable trust, a living trust, that actually can be very, very beneficial, because it can make it easier for you to provide resources to your heirs when you're gone. And so for that reason, a living or revocable trust can be a very, very good way to make sure that your assets, your business, your investments go on to the next generation in a way that is easy and simple. By the way, in December, I'll be doing a special. So if you want to set up a trust or a will, or if you want to talk through your succession planning needs for your business, December is the time to do that. So make sure that you are subscribed to our social media posts so that you get notified when that happens. I see there's a question on the tax benefits for a will versus a trust, and the answer is that is way too complicated of a question to answer in this video. But in short, there is no major tax benefits in the general cases. And so the thing is the trust is a pass-through entity. So if any assets that are in the trust make money or produce revenue or whatever that's taxable, that tax liability is going to pass through to whoever the people are that are benefiting from the trust, the grantor usually. So it doesn't really make much of a difference. If you're talking about passing assets on to the next generation, then if you are passing assets on to your heirs, to your direct lineal descendants, so the children who were born to you or adopted to you, there's not really going to be much of a tax benefit. But if you want to talk about a different situation where you want your siblings or your business partners or whatever to be beneficiaries, that is a complicated situation, and we need to customize the solution to meet your goals. Okay, differences between an LLC and a corporation and the cost to get each one and maintenance. So the benefits of an LLC are that they're very flexible, so it's easy to customize them to meet your needs. They also have very simple overhead. The benefits of the corporation is that they're exactly the opposite. So corporations are rigid in their structure, and they are inflexible in dealing with the requirements, and they do have strict requirements. And you might say, Matt, those are two opposite things. How can they both be benefits? And that is the target audience in each case is different. So if you are a business owner, you're managing a business, you're probably going to want less complexity so that you can focus on running your business, and you're going to want the flexibility that LLC can give you. Both business structures provide limited liability. Partnerships, sole proprietors do not provide limited liability. LLCs and corporations do, if you do run them right. But if you're running your business, you want flexibility and simplicity. However, if you are getting investors, if you have outside investors who are putting money into your business, they actually probably don't want simplicity. They want to make sure that you're following the rules. They want to make sure that you're going through the checks of having owner meetings where all of the owners get together and meet to make important decisions, that you're doing annual reports or maybe quarterly reports depending on the business. And so these outside investors or silent partners, they probably want to make sure that you're legally required to do all of these things. And if that's the case, then they're going to want you to have a corporation so that you are required to jump through those hoops. So if you are a startup looking for outside investors, then you are probably going to want to have a corporation. And oftentimes I see people say to me, Matt, I need a corporation. It needs to be in Delaware. I need to have 10 million shares. I usually say, oh, you've been reading articles by Y Combinator, haven't you? And the answer is that if you are in that situation, I'm going to give you alternative suggestions that meet the goals of outside investors and venture capitalists or angel investors that are cheaper and simpler. So we might do Delaware, we might do Iowa, but we're probably not going to do 10 million shares because that's going to be very, very expensive to do your compliance reports on. So if you are getting outside investors, we're probably going to set you up with a corporation. And sometimes the investors don't care, an LLC is fine. That's typically if you're getting hard money investors, and hard money investors is usually a short-term loan or something like that. That is, they're not going to care if it's a corporation or LLC. But otherwise, if they're equity partners or something like that, they're probably going to want you to be a corporation. Almost everyone else is going to want an LLC because they're going to benefit from the simplicity and the flexibility. This one was brought to me by my daughter, and she asked, "Do we use algebra in business?" And she is right now doing algebra 2. And so I've seen a lot of people on Facebook say, "Another day gone, and I haven't used algebra once." And I would say that you probably have used algebra more than you think. And so I love math. Definitely a math geek. And I'm going to tell you that you absolutely do use algebra more than you think. And you probably do want to use algebra 2 in your business. And I'm just going to tell you that thing that your algebra teacher didn't teach you, they didn't explain to you well enough when you're in school, is this. And that is that the core goal of learning algebra is to learn how to take big, complicated, ugly problems and break them down into small, simple problems. And so if you remember back to those dreadful days of doing your story problems and other things like that, your goal was to take a complicated problem and break it into a lot of simple steps. And you probably remember doing a math problem that was like a whole page for one problem. And that whole page was, okay, first taking this big thing, making it three small things. Okay, taking the first small thing and fixing that one, taking the second small one, solving that one, working on down the list. Well, guess what? This is what life is like, and this is what business is like. You want to build a parking lot, then you've got 100 small problems that look like one big problem. And so you're doing that all the time. You're solving these big problems by turning them into a bunch of small problems. But let's talk specifically about something that looks like math, and we're going to talk about profit maximization. And I use this example when I talk about profit maximization. And first of all, let's just say, what is that? Profit maximization is exactly what it sounds. It's like trying to figure out how to get the most profit. If you are a Gen Xer, you might remember back when videotapes came out. And when you wanted to buy a videotape, it cost you over $100, and that's like in 1983 dollars, right? $100 to buy one videotape. And so nobody did. Instead, what'd you do? You went down to Blockbuster and you rented videotapes. Well, it doesn't cost $100 to make a videotape, right? It costs like a buck to make these things. And so that means you were making $99 profit on every videotape that you sold. But you didn't sell that many because there's only so many video stores in the country. And then um, the videotape companies, the movie companies realize, well, if we drop the price down to $10 for a videotape, we sell way more. So you only make $9 profit on those videotapes, but you sell so many more videotapes that you might be making more total profit. And so that's what this graph is here. So if you look here, the profit per item is really high on the left because you're selling a videotape for $100 and making $99 profit. Whereas your profit per item is really low on the right-hand side where you're selling them for $10 and only making $9 profit. Maybe this is actually $2 and you're making $1 profit. But then if you look, when the price comes down, more people buy them. And so your volume, your unit sales goes up. And so by maximizing your profit, and so this just looks like algebra 2 here, right? You were graphing things in algebra, you're thinking, okay, what's going on here? And I'll just tell you that at the serious level, like when you're Walmart and things like that, you got people who are PhDs that have 15 different versions of calculus that they know, and they're using calculus to do this, not algebra 2 or trigonometry. But you're graphing these things and you figure out, okay, where do these two lines cross? And so you see this little graph at the bottom, and so you'll see here that your profit is going up as your volume goes up, and then your profit goes down because you've crossed this point. And so where this point is at its peak is where your profit is the highest. And so I made a decision when I started my law firm. Some law firms, they go for really expensive services and they say, okay, you want to talk to me, you need to write a check for 10 grand. And I chose not to do that. I chose to focus more on what small and medium-sized businesses need. And so I decided I was going to optimize my firm so that I could work with more clients. And that's why I've had like 400 clients in the last 2 years. And that's because I'm working more on volume. I wanted to go closer to the right-hand side of this graph and work with more people. And did I get the maximum profit? Well, I'm always making adjustments to try to get my profits the highest and also to help the most number of people. But there are some people out there that say, I don't want to have 400 clients. I don't want to have 400 customers. I was meeting with a client earlier today. They provide a very premium service, and their goal is to have 10 customers a year, 10. not 100, not 400 or whatever, and that makes them happy. And so, they've deliberately chosen the strategy of going for fewer customers, but profiting more by selling a very premium product. And this is a conscious decision by their business. I made a conscious decision to be closer to the other side of the graph. And a lot of people, they don't make conscious decisions. They don't think about the optimization strategies, and that's a mistake. So what I would like you to think about doing is thinking about how can you optimize your profits, maximize your profits, and get your numbers so that you are intentionally making decisions that get you to the higher volume or the lower volume or the higher dollar amount or the lower dollar amount price point so that you can achieve your business goals. So yes, we do use algebra business or algebra in business, or if we're not, we should be. Okay, so we had one question come in that I'm going to talk about, and that is there a benefit from switching from an S Corp to an LLC? And this is such a good question because it's so confusing. An S Corp is actually not a type of business. An S Corp is just a way of being taxed, and it's a choice. And so if you start a business, you are probably going to start an LLC or maybe a corporation. An LLC with one owner is taxed as a sole proprietor. The IRS basically pretends that the LLC doesn't exist. When they're looking through their lens, their binoculars at the LLC, they see right through it and they just see a single owner, and you get taxed as if you didn't have an LLC. That does not mean you don't get the benefits of the LLC. The state and other businesses see the limited liability company, the IRS. They just simply ignore the LLC. If you have an LLC with multiple owners, then you are taxed as a partnership. Again, the IRS just looks right through the LLC. They see, oh, here's three people running a restaurant. We're just going to tax them like a partnership. Again, you still get the limited liability benefits of an LLC, but the IRS ignores LLC and sees the partnerships. If you are a corporation, then you are taxed as a C Corp. And that means you are subject to this unfortunate thing called double taxation, which can be dodged. So it's not as tragic as it sounds. But some people, they don't want to be taxed as a C Corp, or they don't want to be taxed as a sole proprietor, or they don't want to be taxed as a partnership, and they fill out a form that says, hey, IRS people, I want you to see us differently. So we're an LLC or we're a corporation, but we want to be taxed as an S Corp. So an S Corp is just a lens that the IRS looks through when they see your business. And now they tax you kind of like a corporation, but you do get a little bit of a benefit tax-wise. However, S Corps must have less than 100 owners, and all owners must either be U.S. citizens or a lawful U.S. residents. And so some businesses, maybe they've got an investor from Canada or outside of the country, or maybe they only live here a few months of the year and they're not green card residents. You can't be an S Corp then. So the follow-up question, is it difficult to switch to an LLC from an S Corp? And the answer is that you just have to fill out a form and send it to the IRS. And here's how S Corps help you tax-wise. They allow you to pay yourself a salary, and then you pay this dreadful self-employment tax on that salary. And then you can choose to also pay yourself with profits which come off above the salary. And so what happens is that dreaded extra 7.5% tax that you pay as self-employment tax is only on the part that you pay as a salary. And so some people will say, what's the smallest reasonable salary I can pay myself? And then that way they can reduce their self-employment tax. However, the problem with being taxed as an S Corp is that you have to file a second tax form for your business. Your business is taxed separately from the owners. And so that extra complexity means you got to call an accountant or buy software or something to do your taxes. And if you don't want that anymore, then you have to elect to be done with it. And so I can help you with that, or even better, your accountant can do that. And it usually takes effect at the end of the calendar year. So if you don't want to be an S Corp, or if you do want to be an S Corp, get on that so that you can do it before January 1st. All right, so we are at the end of our AMA. I didn't think I could talk for 50 minutes, but you who know me know better than that. I can certainly talk for 50 minutes. Subscribe. So I don't care where you're watching me from, Facebook, YouTube. LinkedIn, please follow me or subscribe to the account, and that way you get notified. We're going to start doing this, I hope, weekly. So I'll make sure that you get notified about questions that are coming, and you can submit more questions. But I definitely want to answer those things. And November is tax planning month. Did you know that? Plan your taxes now, because you have enough time left in this year to make a change to your existing tax situation, and you have enough time to implement that change before the year's over. So November is tax planning month. Talk to your CPA, your accountant, your bookkeeper, whatever. Get your books in order and figure out what you need to do before it's too late for the year. All right, I'm signing out. Have a great day and see you next time.